Marvel Snap's largest OTA in a long time has landed, bringing with it a really solid shakeup. For the first time in a long time, there is not a clear best deck for one of these roundups. Let's go ahead and jump on into the details of covering everything from Cerebro to Mr. Negative that's performing well in Marvel Snap right now. Also, you'll have to forgive my surroundings a little bit. As you can tell, I'm not currently in my office. Instead, I'm out here, so enjoy the bugs in the background. Let's kick things off today with Cerebro 2. Initially, this was going to be one of my Jeff's picks, but as you can see, we're jumping right into high potential deck lists today because after I cleaned up an Infinite Conquest win with this on stream before the weekend started, it quickly jumped up to one of the top performing deck lists on Untapped right now. I honestly had middling expectations for this archetype, so it's felt like it struggled a lot in the past as things have changed, but a number of tools, in addition to the pretty sizable buff of Cerebro now giving +3, felt really clean. Lasher in particular is a card that really impressed me throughout these sets. Between it and Mr. Sinister, you have a ton of ways to effectively double up the Cerebro bonuses that you're getting for just 2 energy. Something to keep in mind if you haven't played this type of deck before is that its core, in addition to being a deck that swarms the board, you're also something of a control deck. The combination of Goose, Storm, and Echo dictate very heavily where your opponent is allowed to play their cards out, and then we have other disruptive elements such as Shadow King and Luke Cage that can break up things our opponent has going on past that. Nico Minoru is easily one of the most misunderstood cards in this deck list in my experience. While her Demon Mode and 2x are obviously not useful when you're going with the Cerebro game plan, her other modes are incredibly powerful. Copying a Cerebro, giving it +2 power, rerolling a location that's screwing you up, or drawing 2 cards so you can find the deck's namesake are all incredibly strong things to be doing, and the builds of Cerebro on the public tracker so far that are not playing Nico Minoru by and large have far worse metrics than this one. I'm definitely going to be interested to see how this archetype shakes up as the metagame matures, but I'm pretty happy with the 12 cards contained here. The other most successful variation of Cerebro on the public tracker right now is Cerebro 3. While there are a lot of people trying lots of adorable things like Valkyries and Iron Man and copies of Magic to get yourself a 7th turn, these 12 cards have the best stats by a pretty significant margin. That doesn't really surprise me looking at it. This is just no fluff, all pretty generically good cards that are low to the ground so you can flood the board while also being incredibly disruptive. Killmonger, Red Guardian, Cosmo, Luke, US Agent allow you to mess up a whole bunch of other people in a lot of different ways, and Quake and Scarlet Witch give you pretty fine control over location variants that can often be a thorn in the side for the Cerebro archetype. I also think Cerebro 2 and Cerebro 3 are likely to come out ahead due to the fact that with the +3 buff, both of these numbers dodge getting Shang-Chi'd when you have Cerebro and Mystique on the board while still putting up pretty sizable numbers. Our next high potential deck list from the Untapped tracker is this Fenris stature variation. It has some incredibly efficient stat lines with Hydra Bob, Proxima Knight, and Stature, all adding really efficient points to the board at minimal energy cost, as well as some solid disruption in the form of Moon Knight and Black Bolt proactively stripping your opponent's hand, while things like Juggernaut and Red Guardian reactively disrupt what they're playing on the board. Gambit and Elektra kind of tie the room together as both being disruption as well as a way to help Fenris Wolf pump out additional points in key spots, who's another way for you to get a lot of numbers on the board for a minimal energy investment. I really love the inclusion of Claw at the top end of this deck list, as you often want a clean 5 energy card to play out alongside Stature or Hydra Bob on the last turn of the game, and it adds a whopping 11 points for just 5 resources. Penny Parker's a little bit of a head scratcher to me. Her most notable tool is allowing you to have 5 energy on the 4th turn of the game, so she perhaps accelerates out things like Black Bolt or lets you play perhaps a Gambit and a Fenris Wolf all at the same time, which I could see there being value from. Our next high potential deck list is the best performing Xorn deck on the public tracker by a wide margin. I actually cleared my weekend missions with this one before I signed off of my live stream for the weekend, and it's very efficient at what it does. I think Batroc the Leaper alongside Hydra Stomper is an incredibly fun combination of cards to play, and Xorn does help enable making your Hydra Stomper bigger, albeit in a high variance manner. Overall, having played a lot of these Batroc variations, I would be surprised long term if Xorn is optimal in here. I think there's just better things to be doing. Other tech cards like Cosmo or Luke Cage give you a lot more value than something that makes your stomper nominally larger, while also enabling something like a Vulture that's just big dumb stats as opposed to disrupting whatever your opponent has going on. Looking at the other Xorn variations that people always ask about, things like Red Wing and others, the stats on them are all aggressively middling, so if you really want to play them, you can, but there won't be any of them included in today's roundups because they're just not strong decks by the numbers or in my own personal experience. Sauron got a bit of a side grade in our recent OTA. It's now a 1-3, which is a more efficient stat line than it had before, but it now only impacts the ongoing cards that are in your deck, meaning any that you've drawn are still going to have their drawbacks. This means effects like Zero and Enchantress are more important than ever in this style of deck, so you can play out no matter what you draw on the timing of these powerfully statted cards. Enchantress is also a pretty good card in the metagame in general, and not only mitigating your downsides, but also disrupting at what your opponent has going on. If you're looking to slam pretty efficient stats out and live by the mantra of they can't Shang-Chi me everywhere, this style of deck has had pretty consistently good stats throughout the last number of months in Marvel Snap. Blink Hela isn't a deck that explicitly benefited from anything in the OTA, but is still putting up solid stats afterwards. I actually used a variation of this deck list to finish up my infinite climb through the 90s, and it was really efficient at both keeping my human opponents on their toes, but also climbing over the many demon-charged AIs that were snapping me and stealing my cubes against every other deck left and right. This deck list has a ramp backup plan in Corvus Glade, letting you jump up to things like Blink, Legion, and Infinity Ultron ahead of curve, giving you meaningful things to do even in the games where Hela doesn't show up. This deck list also loves playing out Hela before the last turn of the game, so you can top deck something like an Odin and re-trigger Gambit and Hela, or Corvus and Hela to get whatever else is left in your hand back onto the board again. Re-triggering her effect also has value in the event that you've discarded multiple cards to the same energy cost, since her most recent redesign means she only brings back one thing from each spot along your curve. Moving along to our top performers, Mr. Negative is claiming this crown from our untapped tracker data post-infinite, which is the first time in a while that this has happened. I would estimate while this deck has been putting up solid results for a little while, the downswing of Thanos tech cards means there's less Mobius and Mobius in the metagame, which means this archetype's absolute best draws get to run rampant over the opponent more frequently. Magic generating Limbo also gets to keep that 7th turn around more often when there's less Reality Stones resetting it. This deck list is also the best way to get your Esme Kuko weekend missions done as we head on into the last weekend of the season. As always, there's a ton of Silver Surfer variations with reasonable stats on the Untapped tracker. This particular sample list featuring Fenris Wolf with Negasonic Teenage Warhead and Gladiator as its primary enablers is one of the best among them after the OTA, and anecdotally, I had a good experience playing with it myself. In particular, I really like the fact that Fenris allows you to have 2 bodies for a single card commitment, which makes it easier to trigger Captain Carter's full value inside of her path. Surge is also proven to be an incredibly powerful staple inside of these Surfer shells, since her tagging a 3 energy card for even a singular discount means that you can play 2 3-drops out on turn 5, which really helps this archetype add meaningful amounts of points to the game board. Speaking of Surge, with Thanos on the outs after our latest OTA, this Zabu Surge variation is looking to become the premier way to break whatever your opponent is doing in Marvel Snap, featuring the Kitty Pryde package of Elsa and Galacta alongside Gwenpool to scale up your stats, and then everything from Shang-Chi and Enchantress to Mobius and Red Guardian to kick over what your opponent has going on. This deck list has a good mix of both numbers and disruption, and is among one of the top performing things on Untapped post-OTA. To close things out with our classic Crusher archetype this week, I was pleasantly surprised to see a number of variations of Destroy putting up really solid stats on Untapped after our most recent OTA. I would wager similar to the rise of Mr. Negative, Destroy is simply enjoying the fact that Thanos tech cards is on the decline, meaning more people are looking to execute their own game plans, meaning there are fewer people kicking over the sandcastle or working really hard to build up with this deck. It's hard for a lot of things in the metagame to keep up with a null being split across the board by an Arnim Zola if they're not able to kick over the thing that you're building up. I gotta say, I'm super happy with the churn this OTA has created, and with a new season right around the corner, introducing some new cards as well as a patch and another OTA next week. I doubt this churn is slowing down anytime soon. I would love to hear in the comments down below what deck lists you've been enjoying playing and other things I should consider checking out on my live stream next week when I get back to it. I appreciate the folks that stuck through all the way through to the end of the video, extra background noises and all. Over the summer, I'm going to be spending a lot of time when I'm not live during the week out here, so we're going to be doing a little bit more recording like this on the patio. I appreciate the folks that made it all the way through the end. I hope your next snap pack is an excellent one, and remember not to try and lose your minds too much as you clear towards whatever ranked goals you have as the season's wrapping up.